So I'll start your minute of preparation when it hits the 6.
Alright, well, I need a map of the world really, don't I? I think there is one in here.
That? Is that no one?
That looks like a screen. Got a globe. I'll work with the globe.
Okay. It's for my own.
I did you see this?
Use this item. All right. That's not good. Okay, I'm going to set up your timer. Yeah, these snow days have really slowed down our filming, so not nearly as many teachers as we wanted have done it yet. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Alright, well, to the best of my knowledge, the history of the world, as yet undisputed, seems to have resided in the continent of Africa. I suppose the earliest civilizations and cultures that we know about emerged from this area here, and as far as we're aware, spread up into the Middle East, where we see the first towns and cities. We know that there were significant early civilizations here in South Asia, what is now India, and here in China. Alright. And we are pretty confident that there was some significant early civilization here over in the so-called New World. But what we seem to see is a transition of power from areas outside of there into Europe, or the Mediterranean basin anyway. And what we're going to start to see emerge in the years before the first millennia are the emergence of a couple of significant civilizations, obviously Greece dominating areas of the eastern Mediterranean, and then subsequent to that the emergence of ancient Rome, and for 1,000 years I suppose Rome dominated not just the Mediterranean basin but areas of North Africa, the Middle East and Europe. Obviously, as all kingdoms do, they come and they go, and usually by force. And the collapse of Rome during the 5th century CE is going to create the emergence of the Byzantine Empire, another 1,000-year empire dominating the eastern Mediterranean again. But what I would certainly suggest is that from the point of Greece onwards, it seems that the dominant civilizations, as far as we in America are concerned, are those civilizations that emerge controlling Europe and all that Europe has interest in. And so with the collapse of Rome and the emergence of the Byzantine Empire, what we're going to see when the Byzantines collapse and we move into the middle, into the period of modern history, is we're going to see a world that seems to be dominated by the emergent great European states. But we have to be very careful here, because there were clearly civilizations from other parts of the world that in their place and in their time were as dominant, if not more dominant, and yet as Europeans we of course have chosen to focus on a history which has that Eurocentric look. And so, you know, we tend to ignore the dynasties of China. We tend to ignore the great civilizations of the New World, which were clearly present at that time, but we tend not to look at them. And of course, the many civilizations of Africa which have, for the most part, disappeared into antiquity. But presuming that we're going to stick with that Eurocentric view, what we're going to see in the modern era is the slow and gradual emergence of the great nation states. Those societies which seem to present to us the greatest progress in terms of political structure, economic systems, industrial production, agricultural production, and the states of Britain and France, and a little bit later on, of course, Spain, and then as we move into the 19th century, Germany and Italy, and of course Russia is going to emerge into that game at some point. The emergence of the United States obviously is dated to the 18th century, when it's going to become a major power. But nonetheless, I think dominance of the world really is controlled by Europe and its ability to colonize virtually anywhere it wished. And that position is going to remain in place until the beginning of World War II. And World War II proves to be a watershed, or a landmark time. At that point, the European powers are going to have to step aside. They are small. They cannot compete with some of the emergent states, and of course, after World War II, power is going to reside almost entirely in the hands of the United States on the one hand, and the incredible emergent power of the USSR on the other. And the Cold War, the period from 1945 to 1991, is going to be dominated by those two great powers. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 has placed incredible emphasis on the United States, now the single great superpower of the world, and still trying to figure out exactly how it wants to take advantage of this immense power that it truly has. And there ends the lecture.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Was that kind of what you were looking for?
That is exactly what we were looking for.